Hello, and welcome back to Happy Time, Happy Money podcast with Viktoriia Miracle. And today we have a guest, Walli Miller. She's a financial coach and founder of Financially Thriving Money Coaching. She teaches high achieving young professionals who feel overwhelmed with their finances. She coaches millennials on how to budget, save, and invest while balancing what they want today. Hi, and welcome, Walli.
Hi, I'm super excited to be here. Hi, Viktoriia.
So excited to have you over. And as always, I would love to hear more about you. Tell us your story on how you started on that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a relatively low income household where we never really talked about money much, except for the lack of it. And thinking about even using the terms like wealth or building wealth or investing were not terms that we really use. We didn't really have conversations about that. So it wasn't until I was in my 30s where I really understood that even though I had a good job, I was making really good income. I was a high income earner for being so young. I was paying my bills and I thought I was doing really good with money because I set a little bit of money aside. But the one piece I was missing was actually building wealth. I had no idea how to do it, and I didn't even know what that meant to me.
Okay, well, so you, and then how did you start it? Give us more information.
Yeah. So I really was lucky enough to find a career that I really enjoyed. I had a career that I found extremely fulfilling. But one of the things that I realized was that when management changed, my ideal job became something that was less than ideal. It became very toxic. It was a toxic work environment. And I sort of realized that even though I was making good money and I was able to stay out of like credit card debt, I really didn't have a whole lot to show for the amount of money that I was making. And so I did what a lot of people do is go to the Googles, right? Go to the internet to really try to figure out, how can I retire early? How can I quit my job? How can I build wealth? What am I doing wrong? And that was when I discovered something called the FIRE movement. It was a bunch of people who were able to retire in their 30s and 40s by implementing some really key steps, some simple key steps.
So tell us more about FIRE movement.
Yeah, so the FIRE movement is basically an acronym. It stands for Financially Independent, Retire Early. And when I heard this, when I said, wait a minute, there's people retiring early, and we're not talking about from 65 to 60. We're talking about people retiring 55, 50, 45, even at the age of 40 years old. It really piqued my interest. And what I realized is that they knew something that I did not, which was, we've probably all heard, spend less than you earn, right? So make sure you're not spending every single dollar. But the second factor that I was missing was invest the difference. And it was at that moment where it hit me, right? So many of us, we might bring in $4,000 a month and spend $4,000 a month if you're lucky, right? There's some of us who make $4,000 a month and spend $5,000. But I thought I was doing it pretty good because I said, okay, I'm definitely not spending every single dollar that I make. I'm putting a little bit of money aside. But the key thing that was missing was the ability to grow that money. And I basically spent an entire weekend listening to podcasts and blogs and reading books, watching YouTube videos on how to build wealth. How was it that these people were able to leverage the income that they were earning in order to retire at 40 years old?
Yeah, well, that's amazing. And I mean, everybody wishes to retire early, right? Why not to? So what would you say like most common misconceptions about investing and saving money?
Yeah, I think So much for so long. I just thought it was really complicated. And I also thought that the only people who invested were rich people, right? I thought that in order to start investing, you have to have 10, 20, 30, $40,000. And if you just had a few bucks, it wasn't even worth investing. And what I realized was that some of the lingo, the jargon, the words that were used to explain investing could really seem overwhelming. And it didn't need to be that complicated. So one of the first things that I ask people when they're like, look, I make good money and I have nothing to show for it, they relate to my story or I see myself in them. The first thing I ask is, do you really know where your money is going? Do you really know how much money you're making? Because for so long, usually what people will say is, oh, I make $75,000 a year. Well, that's your salary, but after taxes and after you pay your health insurance, do you really know how much money you're bringing in every month? And then the second question is, do you really know what you're spending money on? When we think about things like food, eating out, groceries, sometimes we give a ballpark number, but so many of us, when we actually take a look at 1, 2, 3 months worth of expenses of the amount of time we order at, Grubhub, Uber Eats, or we go out to eat, or we buy groceries, we then realize how much money we're actually spending there. And so the key thing is not about deprivation. It's not about cutting out all the fun things we love. It's about really aligning what you're spending money on with what you value most. And I think that's really important.
So what do you get to think first before you investing? And like, what was your number one mistake that you've done?
Yeah, so I would say thinking that it was too complicated to begin and that you needed a lot of money. So the first thing that I did, and what I recommend so many people to do, is to leverage the tools you might have with your current employer. So if you're working a W-2 job, take a look to see if they have some type of 401k, a 403b, maybe a Roth or a TSP if you work for the military or in government, right? So see if there are any type of retirement plans that are available to you through your employer. Now, if you're self-employed, don't worry, there are plenty of options for you too. Or if you don't have access to a 401k, there's things like a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. Now, I've mentioned a whole bunch of alphabet soup out there, which is why this thing of investing can seem really complicated. But really just remember, there are some retirement accounts available to you that really make it really easy to begin investing. And so many people don't realize that when you contribute to a 401k, you're actually investing money. You can actually make sure that those monies go into investment accounts.
Awesome. And the last question that I have for everybody on this podcast, fill in the blank for me in this sentence. If you really knew me, you will know that I am blank.
Love this question. So if you really knew me, you would know how much of a money nerd I've always been. I didn't always get all of the money things right, but I always knew that making sure that you had a control of your finances was going to be a big key component to your financial success and well-being.
Beautiful. And I know you have some awesome gift for my audience today. Please, could you share what it is?
Yeah, so I created the Road to Financial Wellness. It's a Road to Financial Wellness roadmap. And it is one of the things that people really forget is that sometimes we want to start with the math when it comes to money, but I always say it's important to start with the mindset and your relationship with money. And so the Road to Financial Wellness roadmap is one of those things that can really help you begin aligning or figuring out, making sure that you really understand what your relationship with money is.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And as always, you can just scroll down whatever you're watching or listening and find in description link to a website episode of this episode, to the page of this episode. And there's going to be all links that we mentioned above, and Instagram of Walli, my Instagram. If you have any ideas, questions, you just want to communicate, love to communicate anything, just send us message, send Walli message. And I'm sure she will be happy to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching or listening today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Thank you, Walli.
Bye. Thank you so much, Viktoriia.